Number 5. Panasonic Lumix DC-GX9. Although DC-GX9 is the best Panasonic camera to begin your career, it limits your potential in terms of creative growth. It can shoot with a speed of 9 FPS up to 30 FPS in 4K photo mode. The model has predictable and fast autofocus, flexible RAW and well-designed control, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. The camera turned out to be compact and convenient, with great control and several programmed buttons. The convenient sensor display and tilting viewfinder should also be noted. In a small body, there is a place for an inbuilt flash and a hot shoe, so you may comfortably work in the studio. Number 4. Panasonic Lumix GH5. Exceptional for both stills and video capture, the Panasonic Lumix GH5 is a brilliant all-rounder. It positively screams high res from its ultra-high resolution electronic viewfinder and fully articulated touchscreen to its 20.3 megapixel image sensor and 4K 60p video recording, along with super fast 6K 30 FPS and 4K 60 FPS stills modes. The DSLR style design brings great handling characteristics and easy access to advanced shooting settings. You also get 5-axis sensor shift stabilization and Lightspeed AF. Number 3. Panasonic Lumix G95. The Panasonic Lumix G95 in the US is a great stills and video camera for enthusiasts and vloggers. It's true that the Micro Four Thirds sensor is smaller than the APS-C sensors in some rival mirrorless cameras, but this doesn't seem to harm its performance. The handling and control layout are great, and the autofocus feels very snappy indeed. The only issue is the price. It's a good camera for stills photographers, video and vlogging, and Panasonic's underrated 4K photo modes offer capabilities other cameras don't have. The Lumix G95 isn't cheap. However, though, it does have Panasonic's vlog mode as standard rather than a paid-for extra. Number 2. Panasonic Lumix S1. The strength of the DC S1R is its great photo detailing thanks to its 47 megapixel sensor. This monster is developed for landscape, studio, object and portrait shooting. Speed parameters are up to 9 FPS with frame-by-frame autofocus and up to 6 FPS with a follow-up one. The buffer is big by modern standards, 40 RAW. It also features some new functions and an ace in the hole in the form of 4K shooting, making the model one of the best Panasonic cameras. In several seconds, it records 6 dozen frames that may be saved as single photos. Number 1. Panasonic Lumix G9. For the lineup of mirrorless Panasonic cameras, this model is a big and qualitative leap forward. Thanks to the high-speed burst shooting combined with fast and precise autofocus, big memory buffer as well as flexible control, effective stabilization system, high photo and video quality in 4K format, this camera may be easily called a professional one. Add a solid metallic chassis, water and dust protection, the possibility to work in sub-zero temperatures, live viewing and control via a qualitative LCD screen and electronic viewfinder, and you'll get a convenient tool for shooting in challenging conditions. Now that we've shown you the best Panasonic cameras out there, let's talk about a few things you should look for before buying one. Aperture. 4 photographs taken with apertures from f2.8 to f22. Changing the size of the aperture controls how much light is let in. The aperture is the hole through which light hits the sensor when the shutter is open. This is another way to control the exposure in brightly or dimly lit places. Aperture size is denoted with an F, for example f1.8. Note, a smaller number means a bigger aperture, which lets in more light. Megapixels. Megapixels are a measure of resolution. With more megapixels, a camera can capture smaller details. This makes it possible to make larger prints without looking blurry. A few years ago, megapixels were the high mark for which cameras competed. Now that modern cameras rarely have fewer than 12 megapixels, more megapixels are not needed except by those intent on making huge prints. Buyers would better concentrate on other digital camera features now. Camera makers label their cameras with a maximum number of megapixels they can capture. This is usually written as 18 MP, with MP standing for megapixels. Specifically, a megapixel corresponds to roughly 1 million pixels. A pixel is a tiny dot from which all digital pictures and videos are composed. Viewfinder. The viewfinder is the part of the camera used to frame images. This makes it the most used part of any camera and a critical one in terms of user experience. There are several types of viewfinders. The rear LCD mentioned above can be used as a viewfinder on the majority of digital cameras. On smaller models, it's very often the only viewfinder available. Plenty of cameras have more than one though, and some can use an optional detachable viewfinder. And flash. A flash on a digital camera, just like on a film camera, is a small lamp that can add light to close-by objects when a picture is taken. A pop-up flash is normally hidden and pops up when it's required. A flash is described by the maximum distance of objects it can sufficiently illuminate when the lens is wide open and when it's completely zoomed in.